any trends that you see that are kind of
like the smart switches is a big one that I'm doing. Like kind of I throw it out there, and it's like for the extra cost, I think it's totally worth it. So you get smart switches is a big one. The other trend is I would say power saving. This is my opinion.
Yeah. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast. This week, I have Jesse from Elephant Electric to go over just things about electrical issues that may happen in your home or rental home. And so welcome to the show, Jesse.
Hey, great to see you, Haze.
Awesome, man. So I guess quick things like, what did you do before you jumped into being an electrician? Like, where'd you come from? How'd you end up here?
So I got started a little bit later into the trade than a lot of people. I didn't go in right out of high school. I was trying to find my direction in life, find my way, find out. So I started out, I went to a couple of years of college, took like kinesiology, which find that everybody that did pretty good in gym.
Yeah,
it's just like it came in, but I figured out that I didn't want to really do that. And so I tried out a couple different things. I worked with children in before and after school care.
Okay.
I also drove a forklift for a couple of years. That was pretty fun. And I did bartending, which I know that you did.
Yeah, that's fun.
Yeah, that was fun. But around when I was like 23, 24, I decided that I wanted to pick a solid career.
Yeah.
And going to school for 4 years to get some sort of college degree or university degree wasn't an option for me. So I jumped right into the trades. I always liked electricity.
Yeah.
Big math guy. So yeah.
That works.
So that's how
for sure, right?
Yeah. I like to sit down and problem solve sometimes, right? And numbers just came easy to me. So it seemed like a natural fit.
Yeah. And I guess with the trades as well, it's nicer to work inside than outside, huh?
Yeah.
Instead of outside swinging a hammer, it can be inside when it's already built up.
It is kind of like a little bit of a lighter trade than framers or, and I tend to keep cleaner than plumbers or whatever, right? And
sure.
So that's why I got into it.
Nice. So Elephant Electric, what does elephants have to do with electric? How come the name?
Yeah. Well, I was trying to think of a name for my company that would kind of stand out, not be like a EAC Electric or something like that, right? So I was coming up with names, and actually it was around the time when my daughter was born that I started up my company, and her name is Ellie.
Okay.
So, and we got that name actually from my wife. Got given her first toy, her stuffed toy that she always remembered. Was a stuffed elephant from her dad.
Okay.
And she cleverly named it Ellie, the elephant. So she always knew that if she had a kid, that there would be a top runner for the name. So so basically it's after my daughter.
Nice.
So
kept the elephant going, man.
She loves it. She we have a bunch of elephants in the house, and it fits the theme.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wicked. Well, let's get into it. One of the questions that always comes up are what are some common pitfalls that you see in rental properties, and how can landlords prevent them? Because, last thing we need is the electrical going down. Now we got a pissed off tenant in a cold house.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So generally, my opinion on it is that you would fix problems as maybe not the very first time they come up, but generally if it starts to look like it's wavering, like your heater all of a sudden doesn't start working for this day, and then it just started all of a sudden again, right? I would suggest maybe to have a look at it, right? Usually I get called in when the buildups happen, so there's 2 or 3 problems that I can fix all at once. That's when you're gonna get, I believe, the most bang for your buck, because if I come in and just fix a switch, it doesn't take me too long to fix a switch, right? And generally you just change it out, but you would want a couple of jobs, obviously barring safety.
We don't need fires.
Yes, exactly. So, but that's so common pitfalls. Would be just, I would not leave it more than a year.
Okay.
kind of like after a year, it's like you should really get it kind of addressed because with electricity, especially, problems tend to snowball. They start out small, and then as the gets worse and worse, it gets worse and worse, and it could be actually lead to damaging equipment or whatever, right?
So, a really big bill. Right?
So it's not like a 911, but you should be in the back of your mind, like, hey, set a date sometime in the year. Yeah. I'm going to, during the summertime, I'm going to get these looked at or whatever your time is.
Yeah, especially I guess with the heating now. You must have more calls coming in for heating during winter, obviously. So I guess if you can make it through the winter, probably makes sense to fix it in the summer, as long as it's working, obviously. You don't want anyone to freeze.
Yes, yeah. So exactly.
So is there like an ebb and flow like that? Like, is it less busy in the summer for you than the winter? Or what's the score? Like, what's a good time to call electrician, the downtime or the quieter time?
So I'm generally I'm a smaller company. Mm-hmm. I keep pretty busy. It's I can get work for one guy. Mm-hmm. It's not an easy trade. So I go in there to do a job for one person, and then I also run my company. Okay. So it's tough. Like I'm always kind of busy, but I do tend to do more service work when temperature changes. Okay. So when it gets really hot, people plug in the air conditioners all the time. Stuff goes wrong usually when the air conditioner is actually a huge demand on your
it's a sudden
system
draw, right?
yes. And it's like something out of the ordinary, right? Yeah. And then same with the winter when they get the really cold. So I get called those times, more service. And then in between, I'm usually doing I'm about 80% home renovations.
Okay.
So I do house renovations, kitchens, bathrooms, lighting. I'll add lighting. So that's about 80% of my business. And I do have a commercial section of clients that I service as well. So I just keep busy with both of them. It's a juggling act, right?
Yeah, for sure.
If you call me, generally we'll be able to get you in.
Nice. So what are some small electrical upgrades that landlords often overlook that can improve either safety or value in a home or anything like that? Is there any like upgrades that you would recommend to kind of set you apart a little bit?
A big upgrade for cost savings. If you have electrical heating in your house, digital thermostat usually is a really good idea. A manual one, I find that your tenants will crank.
Yes.
And tend to just leave alone. Where a digital one, you can program it. And unless you got a really fastidious kind of tenant, they're gonna just leave the programming up. Maybe occasionally change it when it's cold to go up, but then it would just go back to the pre-program that you did.
Okay, so like you fire it up and then
so it's way more efficient.
Yeah.
So digital thermostats is a big one.
Okay.
It reduces your heating costs actually quite a bit. You should be able to get your value out of it like within the first couple of years.
So now when you're saying the digital ones, are you speaking of like things like Nest, or is that like higher up kind of thing? Or are you just talking about
you're paying a little bit more for the aesthetics, and Nest is more for gas furnace.
Okay.
So the electrical ones, they're generally Honeywell makes them. And it frees up your electrical service, and it just when you're heating rooms unnecessarily, obviously, right? The pre-programmed, you don't have to think about it, right? Okay. It's a cost savings, and it's just like one of those set it and forget it kind of things that like your tenants probably won't be as like thorough as you're gonna be about
as a homeowner.
As a homeowner with your electrical bill, right?
So for installing that ballpark, obviously there's things that come up. What would it cost to upgrade from your typical twisty thermostat? That's a technical term you see. To a digital one.
Well, assuming that you've got already all the baseboards installed and you're just changing out the thermostat, it's essentially, I would like to do a few at a time. It's a couple hours of my time and the cost of whatever the thermostat is. So it's usually, say if you got two or three, the thermostat's usually about $150 a piece.
Okay, so like really not that much. So you'll probably get those savings coming back within the next couple of years type of thing, right?
That's what I think. Yeah. Generally, it's like electricity is actually when you're using heat, it's like that's a huge demand. It's actually you probably noticed as a homeowner that you're when it's cool or if you have your AC, that's a heat pump. It adds to your to your bill. You notice
that number go up. Watch the graph climb. New West Electric always sends us a graph so you can see that really big bar. Like, I guess we should slow that down.
July, and then December, January, those are usually high peaks.
Now, there's a lot of like home technologies that's been coming out to help with maintenance. Obviously, the digital heat you just talked about. Are there any other like relatively new technologies that have come up that maybe would help a homeowner or a tenant just get more bang out of their home? Is it like I notice there's a lot of stuff you can control your lights with your cell phone or stuff like this. Like, is this worth it?
You do. You kind of hit the big one I like is the smart switching. It's a lot of like it's a huge advantage to have the control. And I can usually add switches now without running wires. And so there's like a wireless switch that it's like, I go into houses sometimes and they're like, I always wish there was a switch here. Why didn't they build it like that? Right. And it's like now with these wireless switches, I can basically add a switch anywhere you want to control any light in the house. The range on them is actually pretty good. It should cover most of your house. As long as it has like some sort of power switch already, I can usually take that switch and add a switch. So that's pretty cool. And then we can also take all your switches and put it into a hub. I install a hub and then you can have an app that can control all your dim settings, everything like that, right? And you can set your scenes. So I actually do it at my house.
So you're picking up the ladies, you guys set for Barry White?
Yeah, you can
dim lights.
I'm not sure about the audio part, but I can do the lighting for sure.
Notice all the single guys like,
Your tenant could love that, right?
I mean, because that's all like good selling points. Like if we have what we can call a smart house or smart technology or smart house, like that's a nice selling point. You know, a tenant would be like, oh, great, I'm going to save some money, because usually the tenant has to pay their own electrical. So they're like, hey, I'm going to save a bunch of money. Like, I'm in.
Yeah.
You know, if I have choice A or choice B and they're both, one bedrooms, like, oh, this one's going to save me money on my electrical, I might start leaning towards the fancy smart tech one, right? Than the OG.
I find that usually the higher quality tenants that you would probably want in your house would appreciate having the nicer kind of like settings and switches and options like that, right? So that's just one way to attract, like, I believe the right kind of like clients that you would want in your tenant to take proper care of your house. And
absolutely. Yeah. You actually got me thinking, because you said you could put a switch anywhere. How difficult is it to put a light in the center of a room now? Because a lot of the places built in the like late 90s, early 2000s, they were essentially saving money. So you have all these ones that just have a switch to an electrical socket. There's no light in the room. So especially, it's a pain in the butt when you're trying to show them and it's vacant, because you show at nighttime, it's like, oh, here's a fully dark room that I didn't bring my super tall lamp, right?
We can turn on the cell phone light and take a look at the walls.
So like, how difficult is it to like just get a light into some of these rooms? Because a lot of the bedrooms, I find in particular, they just don't have lights in them. It's like, oh, great.
So it's a little bit of context to that. Say in a house like we're in right now, this one would be like your bedrooms are upstairs. You got an attic above there. Okay. As long as I can get access to that, then usually I can get away with
walk around the top.
Walk around the top. I can usually fish a wire down the switch and get there. So no drywall damage. You're looking at I usually about $150 a pot light. And then to get a wire down a switch is another maybe $200.
Okay, so that's not bad.
So yeah. And then usually if you have even a center light, I can swap that for a pot light, or I can, and it's just no drywall damage, or we can just add pot lights into the room to make it more modern. Yeah. And then, but if it doesn't have an attic, then we got to figure out a way to get a wire through walls.
Just got to hope like hell that the columns are going the right way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If you figure out a good way to do that, you probably could make some money without destroying drywall. So you should patent that.
So it's funny actually, because I was talking about how like the early 2000s and that obviously codes are a little bit different and they keep on changing throughout time. What are some common code violations that you see just to be aware of like older properties, and what would you suggest are some inexpensive ways to fix them, or big ones that should be fixed like ASAP? Example, some of the places that we sell have no GFCI, so the ones that I think that's what they're called, where they if water gets in, they turn off, and that wasn't code to have them in the kitchen, which is super weird, for a long time. So that always comes up in our inspection. So obviously, I would suggest that one's a fairly important one because there's a lot of water in the kitchen.
Yes.
But are there any other like kind of just that have come over the time code changes that you think like, oh, make sure you check for X?
So if I was to buy, if we're talking about having a rental home or buying one, the code violations with electrical, the nice thing about electrical is there's a lot of fail safes and it's been around for a long time. So code violations, while they should be addressed, for sure. And the inspector, or I do actually home inspections as well, obviously specializing just in electrical, but you would want to worry mostly about the type of wiring you have in your house. So anything prior to 1950s used like a knob and tube kind of wiring. I'm sure most people know what that is as a homeowner, right? You want to be really aware if you have that in your home. And another big one, usually it's mid 60s, 1965, 1964 to 1973, 4-ish. If anything in that area, for whatever reason, the economy switched over to aluminum wiring on plugs and switches and stuff like that. It was just cheaper to wire a house back then with using that stuff, right? So if your house is built in that time, you should really be aware that if you have aluminum wires attached to specifically your switches, your plugs, and your lights, not any of the bigger stuff, that's not as much of a concern, but that is actually a concern that should be addressed as well. So those kind of things, those are the big pitfalls. Another one that if your service is older, if you were ever looking to upgrade it, there's the service code has changed quite a bit from the 90s, 2000s. Now they require quite a bit of a more robust service. So what you think might work, actually, they wouldn't meet modern code standards. So you would definitely ask an electrician and see if you can even keep your current service when you're...
And when you're saying service, you mean as in like the electrical box, right?
Yes.
Like where your breakers are and stuff.
The main one coming in. So usually if you have an overhead service, you got their lines coming into your house. And then it goes down a pipe into your panel. So it'll be usually very close to you wherever your meter is that you see that you would read for your electricity usage.
Now, would you have to worry about that sort of thing in a condo, for instance? Because obviously they have a monster service way down in the basement. You're not going to have to deal with that on the 28th floor, right? For sure
not a condo. So this would be more applied for detached single family homes. So like even townhouses, getting a service upgrade into townhomes is it's more complicated, let's say, than a detached home. Detached home, you're really like separated from the grid, from everybody else. So what you do doesn't factor so much into what before you has done.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. So like anybody before you, right?
Now, with being separated from the grid, which is actually just sort of cued me in, do you deal with anything such as the solar panels and stuff like that, or is that a different realm?
So
because that's kind of new stuff, right?
Yeah. So it's generally location. I have done a few solar panels where I basically wire up to a storage battery.
Yep.
And then through the sunny parts of the year, they just use the solar panel. And then when they're not using it, it charges in a battery. And then in the colder ones, they have a little bit of power that they're available just for, really kind of basic stuff like charging phones and like not anything too huge. Usually you need a generator of some sort to have some more power on demand. Like if you were like, say, cooking with electricity or something like that, that's not as far as I know, not a solar like capable, unless you're really going all out on it, like
Monster California style.
investing a huge amount of money into solar panels. But the one home I did is for a remote cabin that doesn't really have any
off the grid in Pemberton.
It's off the grid, right? So you know what, he has a little bit of peace of mind, and if anything happens to his generator, runs out of gas, he's got a few like probably half a day to a day of power that he still can do, right?
Okay, that makes sense, man. So now we do, obviously this show's mostly about landlords and tenants and investing and all that sort of thing. What are some telltale signs if the electrical has been abused, whether it be from a previous owner or tenant or not? Like, I mean, obviously if we see a heap load of plugs into the one socket, most of us came through elementary school learning about not to do that. But are there any other signs that there's been abuse to electrical, basically, to kind of like, hey man, maybe don't do X or whatever it be?
So one big sign is if you have constant tripping a circuit breaker for like, oh, this power goes out, I just reset it. If you do that more than like a couple times a year, it's an issue. You should be addressing it. There's something in that circuit. It's not really designed to be used to be reset 30 times in a year or something like that, right? Like there's something wrong. It should be addressed, or you should switch how you're using and where you're plugging things in, because usually that's the way it is. It's something new that's happened. I always like, this breaker's tripped. I always go, what has changed in the last week that you've done to your power? You're plugging something in, and it's almost like I gotta be a detective and just get it out of them. Like, what did you do? And then they'll be like, oh, it's a heater. Okay, the heater then is what's causing the problem. So that one, and then obviously they make electrical devices fairly robust, but if you're abusing them, if they're cracked, obviously the visually looking at it, if it's not quite looking right, like sometimes switches, the toggle will pull away, you can see it top inside of that should be replaced.
Just so they get the buzz.
Any physical damage, right? And then obviously if the device is not working the way that it's intended to do, like your dimmer is not dimming, or something like that, right? Or really, your switch doesn't work every time. Like, it should work every time you turn it on and off. It's like, if I do it 3 times, it works the third time usually, is probably something that you should be looking at.
Unless you got the OCD. Like, I have to do it 3 times.
Yes, exactly.
So, and also with that, I mean, this is actually a good time to ask, just for our viewers and listeners, what are some of like horror stories that you've seen? Like, have you gone into some places where you're just like, what the hell is going on in here? Like, anything that sticks out in your mind that you're just like, wow.
Yeah. So I have like a client that called me in, and he had his painters in the house. I don't know his painters, but it was kind of like an all-in-one kind of crew. They drywall painted and then did some simple wiring, and
Just that
and then something, just an all-in-one kind of crew. And he actually had, he sent me a picture of his switch that he had on a wall that you could see that it was glowing.
Oh my gosh.
Like molten.
That was a bad sign, right?
Yeah, so he sent me that, and I was like, he's like, what should I do? And I'm like, turn off that circuit immediately. Yeah. And then, we ended up opening up that box and finding out, which is a lot of the common problem with electricity is when I look at it, if the workmanship looks sloppy, it generally is. That's when stuff fails, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a very visual thing. Like there's a lot. They make it, like I said, like I love the fail safe. If you're neat with your wiring and you do neat work, generally you can identify the wire easily. You can and it's easy to work with, and you can make it. It's almost hard to make a mistake when you're neat, right? But if you're sloppy, that's when things start getting out of control. And then that one,
wires crossed, as it were, right?
Yeah, that one. I don't even know if I can duplicate what those guys did. I'm still trying to figure out what exactly happened, but basically the wire heated up to the point where he had it melted the box, it melted everything. Wow. It could have been bad.
Yeah, you get pretty close to ignition at that point in time, eh?
Yes, I was very happy that he called me and we were able to solve it and figure out.
So that sort of is a good segue. Thanks, man. For like DIY, do it yourself versus pro work, what's kind of the cutoff? Because I mean, you don't want to bring a broadsword when you can use a scalpel type of thing, right? Are there certain jobs that the average person can probably just look up on YouTube and do, and like not really a big deal? Or should you just always use a pro? No bias aside, of course.
Yeah. I'm like, with electricity, it's hard to recommend the DIY, just because I don't want to say, this should be okay, and then all of a sudden, but you don't know how to turn off the right breaker, or you don't have the right tools for the job. Then it's tough to say that because if I recommend it and you get hurt, I would feel like bad, right? Like I don't. So you should know yourself, the level of confidence that you have, but I wouldn't beyond maybe doing a simple light change out that you can turn off the breaker. Yeah. Because essentially if you turn off the power, you're just working with metal. Then, right? It's not electricity. There should be no electricity, but but just make sure if you're doing it yourself that the power is off, and that you're safe, and that you're not messing with wiring. If you don't understand how things are wired, but if it's a black wire and a white wire, you can change out your own lights if you like, right? If
match 1-1.
Yes, exactly, right? Or but there's switching starts getting a little bit complicated. Plugs, I'm leery about telling people to do their own plugs is because usually they'll think it's off, but it's not. And it's because you'll do a couple, and then sometimes in a room it's not on the same breaker. So it can get so just obviously be careful and make sure that whatever you're working on is obviously disconnected from power.
Yeah, for sure. So now, as far as insurance and liability, with you checking over stuff, and you can give the stamp in that you're obviously insured for all the work you do, in case there's a fire afterwards.
Yes.
Right? So is that with all electricians? They all have there's a governing body or something of this nature, or
There is.
Yeah.
There is. So, of course, it's regulated pretty strictly.
Yeah.
The governing body is called Technical Safety of BC. So that's you can actually look up any electrical contractor and look up their license.
Okay.
And see how long they've been an electrical contractor.
Yeah.
And basically, there's almost all the information you need to check their credentials.
Yeah.
And if you just go to Technical Safety contractor license, and you type that into Google, you should be able to, it'll bring you to a page where you can look up any contractor.
Okay, that's
and
good.
then if you are hiring a contractor, they should be able to provide you with their contractor license number.
Okay, so that's a good thing to ask to make sure that you're dealing with like
a licensed
the real
contractor.
deal.
Because honestly, to work on anything electrical, you need that.
Yeah.
It's, or somebody within your company to pull permits, to do any sort of regulated work, it's called. You need that license.
Okay, that's good.
And then that covers you for insurance. But
yes, which is good. Just want to make sure that everyone's got their butt covered, right?
Yeah.
Because in this day and age.
Yeah.
So when you are hiring a electrician, what are a couple of good questions to ask? Obviously, licensing would be a good one, but other things just to make sure that they're competent. Because, I mean, you drive a car. You know that there are people who have the license that probably shouldn't be driving anyways, even though they passed the test, right? So are there any questions or ways to go about to make sure that, you know, you're getting a strong electrician and not just some guy who happens to have the license?
So if it were me, electricity is a broad field.
Yeah.
So there's like electricians that are very good at what they do, but what you need them for might not be the case, right? Yeah. So I would ask them, like, commonly, what kind of work do you do?
Okay.
If you're getting electrical done in your house, it probably not in your best interest to hire a guy that always works in warehouses or in the industrial or power lines, right? Because they specialize in another part of electricity, and they're probably not as familiar with homes as like somebody like me is. I generally just work in homes, but I'm not gonna be going and changing traffic lights or, you know, right? Like I stick to my lane, right? So that's a great question to ask them is, do you typically work in home renovations?
Okay.
Wood frame, commonly referred to as. Another question is how long you've been an electrician for. Is
that never hurts.
Because sometimes there's a gray period, and when you get your ticket, everybody's excited to get their ticket. It takes 4 years to do it, and it's kind of a double finish line. You get school, and then you also get the hours that you require to complete the journeyman, the Red Seal trade. Right after you get that, they just go, "You're a journeyman. Here you are," right? But it's like you might still be a little bit shaky on some of the things. So I always try to get. It would be a good idea to get a guy that's been doing it for quite a few years. You just the on-job, on-site experience is invaluable and just so much more safe and practical than what you can learn in school, or, you know, just you have to be doing it for years to get actually skilled at the job.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's the same thing with the real estate. You get your license and they're like, "Good luck." You're like, "Oh,
I know.
Guess I'm going to go sell people's most expensive purchase now. Bye."
Huge life-changing decisions every day.
It's it's the same boat. It's like, okay, maybe someone should get some experience here.
It's very
apprentice a bit, right? So with purchasing and that, red flags, for instance, what would be some that if you walk into, you know, an older home, maybe even some newer homes for that matter, that you would kind of watch out for? I mean, obviously the main one that I've noticed is, you know, if you see like the black mark around the electrical socket, like, that might be a problem, right?
Yeah.
But are there other ones that someone should look out for, some red flags in a home? I don't know, light flickering or just anything in particular that someone can kind of, on a high overview, kind of test for without having to bust out any special tools or something.
You kind of touched on it earlier, is that you can get a general sense of how well the electrical is done by how neat the workmanship is. So, like, you know, if it's like things are out of level, things don't look like they've been like properly attentive and cared for.
Askew kind of thing? Okay.
Yeah, I know it seems nitpicky, but it's like if the person takes the time to care about a level switch, likely what's behind that switch is well, it's done well as well, right? So and then you got to know the GFI switches that you brought up earlier, GFCI. Is you look in, it should be in your kitchen, it should be in your bathroom, it should be in your outdoor ground level plugs.
Okay.
So if I would take at a very high level, if that's done, at least code was followed to that point, right?
Okay.
And then just if I'm walking through a house, this stuff makes sense. Switches are in the right spot where they should be, kind of thing, right? Like somebody put some thought and care in how they laid out your house electrically. Generally, if it's done that like where it seems like it is thoughtful and is cared for, then your fridge is plugged on the outside. You can see your fridge plug, but it's outside of it, and you can see it. That somebody made a mistake. Somebody didn't care enough to even move it, right? And it's like new or old, right? Like, or it's been renoed, right? Another one would be a reno job, and like, how well is the reno? Does the reno look good, right? Because that's obviously been done. If it doesn't look that good, maybe the workmanship, the work on it wasn't that good.
Yeah, that's one of those questions that we always ask about renos is when they were done. Most people think that you're asking for that to see like how old the granite countertop is or whatever. What we're actually asking for is to find out, did you do this for yourself or did you do this for the sale? Because I find like 9 times out of 10, if they did it for the sale, they've used the dirt cheap bottom stuff because they just want it to look pretty, lipstick on a pig.
Yeah.
And that's probably where you're going to find your askew stuff, or they didn't take the time to move the plug or stuff like this. And they didn't care. They want to get it out.
That's the stuff you see. The stuff with electricity you don't see, right? That you got to be, unfortunately, more worried about, or at least cautious about. You're not worried. I wouldn't worry about it, but like cautious, and just make sure that you know what you're going into.
Yeah. Now you touched before on the aluminum wiring and that. So if you're finding aluminum wiring behind your plugs and whatnot like that, does that, part of my ignorance, does that mean the whole wire all the way through the house is aluminum as well? Like, do you need to change your entire house electrical, or can you get away with changing just the switch, or like what's the score on that?
Potentially. It could be your whole house. So often what happens, knob and tube, I get contracted out to replace or get rid of knob and tube out of your house and aluminum out of your house. Okay. The branch circuits is called. It's just that branch circuit's basically just the technical term for what gets attached to your switches, your plugs, that kind of smaller wire. Yeah. Right. So first place I would look is in your panel. And as long as you're an electrician, you could take off your panel cover, and usually you see the aluminum wire inside there. It's attached right to your breaker, right? If you see aluminum wire there, it's likely throughout your house. Okay. An acceptable practice that insurance companies actually get me to do is there's a special antioxidant I can put on the wire, and a special moret. Okay. And I put a tail off on it that's copper, and then that satisfies usually insurance.
Yeah, which is an important thing, because insurance, the claims have been getting crazier and crazier.
Yes. So if you were interested in, and that would be the bare minimum I would do, is if you find aluminum, I would hire a contractor to put tails on that. And that would be the cheapest, most cost-effective way. If you can afford, if you're doing a renovation or something like that, at that time when the walls, if some walls are coming off, some drywall is getting damaged, I would rip that stuff out of your house.
Just do it right away.
Yeah. If it was my house, I'd get rid of it. Yeah. It essentially, probably half of my service calls are due to loose wiring on aluminum. Oh. Not like where the service call is something to do that's flickering or, Yeah. So aluminum is very troublesome. Knob and tube is very troublesome as well. So those, I best case, get rid of it. But if the obviously budget wise, just making the tails and attaching that to the device. Okay. Copper. You just want copper attached to your switches, plugs, dimmers, all of that stuff.
Cool. So now, obviously, that's the older stuff. Are there any future trends that you're seeing? We had some painters on before talking about the hot colors or whatever. Obviously, there's not a special wire coming out. At least I don't think there is. But do you see any like future trends coming out? We know there's a big push for LED lights and stuff like that. Are there any trends as far as renovations that you've been seeing? More people are installing this or that, or getting rid of this or that.
Yeah.
Any trends that you see that are kind of
like the smart switches is a big one that I'm doing. Like kind of I throw it out there, and it's like for the extra cost. I think it's totally worth it. So you get smart switches is a big one. The other trend is I would say power saving. This is my opinion.
Yeah.
But with all these car chargers going into people's houses, I think the demand for electricity is going to be more, and it's like simple economics. If the demand is more, the price goes up.
Of course.
So you I believe that you'll be wise to try to move towards more of an efficient home, right? Use less energy. And then at the very least, it frees up your panel to get nicer stuff like car chargers. I'm doing lots of.
I'm sure.
So car chargers are a big one. Like, and then when you're doing a renovation, you got like a second stove, and you get some nicer stuff when you're freeing up your circuits and your lighting and your plugs, and your efficiency is in your main house. Yeah. You free up room to do nicer things with the power you have available. Right.
Does switching to LED make that big of a savings? And when you're switching that, like, is it just switching to the LED light bulb, or do you actually have to switch the whole unit to get the savings?
So I find that, so the savings, yes, it actually is quite a bit when you add up an entire house.
Yeah.
A 60 watt light bulb can be replaced with a 6 or 7 watt bulb, which is like it translates literally as it sounds. It's 10% of the power you're using.
Yeah, I guess
you're saving 90%.
Yeah,
and because it's watt is actually the power you're using, right? So 60 watt is like using 60 watts of power, and without going into crazy math or whatever, right? But you got a 60 watt bulb and you got a 6 watt LED bulb.
Yeah.
You're using literally 10% of the power to do the same job. And in times every room in your home, it does add up.
Oh, I'm sure
quite easily, right?
Yeah.
And I forgot the second part of the question.
No, actually, you just answered the whole thing about whether it is a savings. I asked about the bulb, but does it make a difference if you change the entire unit?
So, the other one was I find with the bulbs, sometimes like if you buy a big bulk, cheap one, sometimes there's problems with it not being dimmable.
Okay.
So you just take a look on the package, find it's dimmable. And I find that the bulbs burn out.
Okay,
quite often,
because they're not supposed to. I thought this was supposed to last like 100 years or something.
So that's the LED. It's they get you on the technicality on it. Yeah. The actual LED is just a solid state thing. It doesn't have any moving parts, so it won't fail.
Yeah.
But the transformer to run it
fails.
fails. Sometimes, right? That's what. Honestly, when you see maybe I've been noticing actually on street lights out when I'm driving around, they flicker.
Yep.
They're flickering. You'll see occasional one, and that's the driver or the transformer.
Okay,
that's running it. The LED is actually not failing. The driver that's supplying it with the power is that failed.
Is that the ones that are turning purple?
Not purple. Like we had the earthquake a little bit ago, and then I'm driving along the highway, and there's like a section in between the kind of 200th and 76.
Yep.
That the lights are flickering, and then they're supposed to light up, but they're just like flickering on and off. It's common with LED.
Okay.
If you see it flickering, that's the driver.
Okay.
It's not the actual LED. It pretty much can't be the LED. The LED doesn't have any moving parts to fail.
So it's just there, right?
Yeah. You got to replace the driver.
Yeah.
And then they get you. But the LED is good. And then so they're not really lying.
Fair enough. Right?
Yeah.
Wicked, man. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate. If someone's trying to get a hold of you to put in some smart lights or whatnot, what's the best way to find you?
Best way to find me is on the web. My website is that's my email. Sorry. My website is elephantelectriccompany.ca.
Okay.
You can go in there, and I got like a contact us page that you can give me a quick explanation of what you would like done and what you need, what kind of service you need. Nice. And just leave your name and number on there. And I usually get back to people within 2 to 3 days. Or you can send me off an email. I have my email and my number there. I respond to text messages as well.
Perfect. Yeah, and we'll have all your information in the description below, so it'll be all good. So if you've been listening this long, we hope you found this helpful for you. My name's Haze. This has been Bamboo, Vancouver's property management and investment podcast.